Hey everybody, this is Brian Aiello. On episode number 53 of Origin Stories on Creativity, I had the pleasure of speaking with Bob Beers. He's one of those guys that deserves his own folklore song. Basically, he grew up in Humboldt County, California, one of those gorgeous spots of the country where every writer would love to wake up in the morning and write all day. It's rainy, it's foggy, it's beautiful. He played cowboy in the Old West. He wrote Stan Lee with a couple of sketches that turned out to be, at one point, comic book characters. I think he said the Wasp and Black Panther, which has got to irk you, and it irks him. And he's also extremely proud of that. He has a number of books out right now, available on Amazon.com, that I highly recommend checking out. In the fantasy noir genre, it's about a detective in the San Francisco Bay Area called the Tony Mandolin Mysteries. They're fantastic. They're a lot of fun. You could find them on Amazon, I think primarily, and also I believe you could check out his website. All that information will be available in the show notes. I'll fill that out for you, no problem at all. He's a great guy. Check out his information. And with no further ado, best person to talk Bob Beers is Bob Beers.
The Round Table.
The Round Table. Okay.
Round Table. Mm-hmm.
Okay. How long have you been engaged with them?
Oh, a couple of years.
Oh, okay. Are you primarily a science fiction writer with the Mandolin series?
Mandolin's not sci-fi. It's urban fantasy or supernatural fantasy.
Oh, interesting. What's supernatural about it?
Vampires, trolls, fairies, elves.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And it takes place in what kind of a world?
It takes place in today's San Francisco. It's current.
Man. Oh, I like that. Are you living in San Francisco yourself?
No, actually, I'm currently in Southern Nevada, but I spent quite a bit of time in San Francisco. In fact, I turned 21 in San Francisco way back in the 70s.
Oh, it's a great city. I've been there a few times. I love San Francisco. I would live there in a heartbeat if it wasn't outrageously expensive.
It was much more affordable back when I lived there, and one of the things I wanted to do with the series is I wanted to put my character into the San Francisco that I knew then, and include into it attributes of what's going on now. I did not live in the good section of the city. I lived in what's called the Tenderloin.
I've heard of it. Isn't that
Yeah.
where the tech industry is now?
No, and unless you consider tech the disposal of condoms and syringes.
I guess it is kind of technical in a way.
Yeah.
To some people. Interesting. That's interesting. That's where you lived back in the 70s?
That's where I lived back in the 70s. Yep.
Gotcha.
And I had a battered old VW Bug. And back then you could actually park on the street. I lived in one of the communal apartment houses that they had. One bedroom, bathroom down the hallway. Everybody ate in the same kitchen.
Wow, a different world completely. I mean, nothing like that even exists anywhere anymore. You have to have your own place. You have to have your own kitchen and bathroom now. I mean, basically, I lived in a hostel when I first moved to New York, but I mean, that was basically, I was employed there, and we shared a room with a bunch of people from all over the world. It was a great experience, but it wasn't a rooming or boarding house. It was, backpacking. It was
yeah, and today that one room would be unaffordable to me now, and back then it was about $100 a month.
$100 a month, my goodness. So now in your urban fantasy, San Francisco in the modern world, how does Mandolin get by? Is it cheap like this? Is it an existence that is affordable, or is it outpriced now too? Is the
Well,
10?
I'm currently writing book number 8.
I know, I saw that. You're prolific.
And well, the story, I just keep listening to the voices.
Yeah.
The the stories start out where Tony is a struggling PI. He has a walk-in office in what is called the Old Town section of San Francisco, down near the Embarcadero, a couple blocks off of it, in an area where nobody is prosperous. Not even the landlords are prosperous in that section of town. And he's barely getting by. But through this first case, he becomes noticed by one of the most powerful crime lords in California. And because his case dovetails into what this guy wants to have happen, all of a sudden, Tony is getting contacts from all of the other criminal elements in the city, and they're throwing money at him to either keep him from involving them in his case or to get them noticed with this crime lord that has essentially adopted him, much to his chagrin and disgust.
So
And
well, go ahead. I'm sorry.
at the end of the case, he winds up earning enough money, along with the various lumps and other things that go along with it, to purchase a Victorian in an older mid-city neighborhood up past a couple of the hills. And I've been there. It's an absolutely gorgeous little area. In fact, in reading the books, all of the directions that I give, you can follow on a map.
Oh yeah, because you're in love with this city. This is your fantasy, basically, living in San Francisco. This is
Oh,
your
yeah.
town.
Well, yeah. And if I had the money that Tony was given in this, I would.
Where do you find your inspiration from in terms of the story?
I find it everywhere. I find it in my own history, the people I know, people I like, people I dislike. They are all recognizable in some of the characters. The people I really dislike, they usually wind up coming to a very horrendous end. And
In terms of literature?
in terms of the writing, their character,
Well, I mean,
the
in terms of
names
the
are
type of,
obviously changed.
in terms of the things that you read, where are you pulling this type of fiction from?
I am a huge fan of Terry Pratchett. I
Oh,
enjoy Jim Butcher's writings. I read Piers Anthony as a teenager. Um, and a lot of it is also built into my own imagination. I was one of those children who made up stories as he went along. I got in trouble in elementary school and middle school for being a, quote, daydreamer, close quote.
there's nothing wrong with being a daydreamer. What was frowned upon? What did you do that would would make you get in trouble for daydreaming? Is that, I mean,
And we're writing little short stories instead of doing math.
yeah, I would do the same thing. I would draw dragons.
Mhm.
So you're writing 8 novels. Are you independently published or are you traditionally published?
I am published both independently and traditionally. The publisher for the novels, this series, and the epic fantasy series that I've since finished a while back are through Writers Exchange. They're a Australia Queensland publisher.
Oh, okay. Australia. How'd that come
Mhm.
about?
I couldn't find anybody in the US interested in looking at me because almost every single literary agent, and this is going on today,
Yeah.
is interested in finding the next Harry Potter.
Yeah, well,
And except these idiots, not one of them realizes the irony that she was rejected 43 times.
and you know the people that rejected her looked they published reality autobiographies in place of her. They don't know what they're looking for until they look back and they notice that she's already been published by somebody else.
Oh yeah, but you see this throughout the publishing industry, including Hollywood, for example. They will reject a plot because nobody's done it before.
Yeah,
And
you
then
know the story about George Lucas, right? I mean, they didn't think he had anything either. They said, "Oh, George, you have nothing. Go ahead and take your toys. Take your toys and make your next movie because this is going to be a complete flop."
Same thing with Star Trek. And how many imitations of those have shown up after they became successful?
So what do? You have 8 novels and you go to Australia, and how are they or is it only being published in Australia, or are they being published elsewhere as well under that that label?
Worldwide. Yeah, they have a presence. They even have a presence in China.
Interesting. So they're being translated.
I don't know. I do know that some of them are in German, but I try to stay away from that end of it, because if the writer becomes more concerned about how the books are doing, you don't get any writing done.
No, it's very true. Bukowski is one of my favorite authors, and he had a gigantic literary presence in Germany. Gigantic. He had very popular in Germany, and it was accidental to him. I mean, obviously he was a drunk and had no clue what he was doing other than hitting keys in the typewriter and being just a beautiful poet. And he read a novel occasionally, but they loved him in Germany. He would make tons of money over there.
Yeah, I once got a odd compliment. I was trying to get some online tech support done for my cable provider, for my modem, and the guy was either in India or the Philippines, and we pulled up my stuff, and then he paused and then asked me, "Are you the guy who writes Tony Mandolin?"
Whoa, really? That's neat. As an author, that's gonna blow you away. I was gonna ask you if you're related to Bob Beers from the Boston Bruins.
People have asked me that before, and I have never ever played hockey in my life.
Well, I was gonna say if you were, I couldn't talk to you because I'm in New York.
Yeah. Well,
I don't even follow hockey. I was just looking for a way to start the conversation, but you're very personable, so I had no issues there at all.
Yeah. Well, one of my cousins used to be a bull rider for Tony Lama. So,
what is this?
Tony Lama makes cowboy boots.
Oh, okay. Wow,
and
that is a dangerous sport, right? God.
Yeah. And Jack looked dangerous.
Really? Yeah, they are not. They're not fun. They don't look fun guys. I mean, they drink, they smoke, they're fighters. They look death in the eye, their job every night. They're not entertainers, but yet they're
here I am nicely padded, and he's got 0% body fat.
And that's only because all they do is drink.
well, and the girls come up to him and he's showing his abs. Say, "Hey, ladies, I got a keg over here. What do you need a 6-pack for?"
That's crazy. So you're in Southern Nevada.
Yes, I am.
Are you into the fighting at all, or did you see the Mayweather?
No,
No, you didn't watch that.
I don't watch that at all. It's just about as much fantasy as WWF these days.
I know. You don't know if it's legit or not. I mean, it's so crazy. The guy lost his win in like the 10th round. It's like, is that legit? Did that actually happen? Who knows?
I saw tape of that last swing and the embrace and the huge smile.
Yeah.
He did not look tired. He looked very happy. Of course, I'd be happy too if I let somebody beat me up for $1.5 million.
$1.5 million? You're talking like 300 million, I think.
Well, it was, believe me, the dollar amount was beyond insane. Yeah. I'm quite frankly, I would be very happy if I had half of what the Harry Potter books got.
She's a billionaire, right? And she keeps having to give hundreds of millions of dollars away every year just to make it. So she's less than a billionaire, I think. It's insane. It's insane.
Yeah.
But I mean,
And
come on. I mean, the idea that you at one point are writing in a coffee shop and you're barely keeping your, a rent every single month in your bank account, and then the next minute you're, got a castle, and
mhm,
it's just unbelievable.
yeah.
I mean,
And
you obviously didn't win the lottery. You worked. You wrote something magnificent. 200 pages of really, really good prose. Did you read the Harry Potter series?
I've read the entire series. She did very, very well at it.
Yeah. I mean,
And
I think the secret is
that's
what? The
being a
secret is the
storyteller.
same as exactly. The story is, I mean, the secret is what? It's the same as George Lucas. You take concepts from a lot of different elements and you kind of interweave them originally, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
And I think
Now,
you're kind of doing the same thing with your work, aren't you? Kind of taking.
yes and no. It's there is a secret to putting together a book that people will read. Before we go there, answer me this:
Sure.
what are your favorite parts of what you've read so far?
Of your work?
Yes.
Oh, sir, I don't read anything that I interview. I let you
Okay.
tell me about it so that it's completely fresh to me. I like to
Okay.
explore the work through the author fresh.
I see. Okay. That is very understandable, and actually, that's a good choice for what you're doing
Yeah, I mean, if I
because
go into it
then
with a mindset of let's do a book report together, then I mean, there's a whole audience of people that are trying to get to know you, and I want to get to know you too, and they've not
okay.
read you.
Well, um, one of the keys of any good story is to have fully rounded characters,
Well, tell me
and
what
even
a fully rounded character is.
when you're reading the book, you have a mental picture, not just a hazy um, summation, but you can see and hear and experience that character as you're reading them. You know what that character looks like, you know what that character sounds like, you understand their mannerisms. The entire gestalt is right there.
Yeah.
And the writer has to put that in. For example, my character, Franklin Amadeus Jackson, otherwise known as Frankie.
Hmm.
And if you listened to Chris's reading of the short story, he had Frankie down beautifully. He did a
He's a
masterful job.
wonderful actor, isn't he? He does these stories so well.
Yes,
And
he
I guess
does.
that's not true. I do listen to his podcast, and I must have listened to your story as well, because that's where I discovered you.
Mhm. Well, uh, um, a whole lot of shaking is essentially one of my novels boiled down into a short story.
So that was not
Because,
originally a short story.
oh no, was a short story. It was written as a short story for that purpose. In fact, I've written a second one for Chris that has he and his wife in it as characters as themselves.
That's neat.
But,
Very
but
kind of you.
Frankie, well, it was fun. Frankie is nearly 7 feet tall, and he has to mass out closer to 400 pounds than 300.
Is he a
Very.
fantasy creature as well, or is he
Oh
human?
no, no. He's. Are you familiar with the black actor from The Green Mile,
Oh,
Michael
of
Clark
course,
Duncan?
yeah.
Okay.
Unfortunately, he died
Pic,
of a heart
uh,
attack not too long ago.
yeah. Picture the character from The Green Mile, that size,
Hmm.
but also give him the mannerisms of the bartender in Killjoys.
Killjoys, I'm not familiar with, I don't think.
Killjoys is a Canadian sci-fi TV series about futuristic bounty hunters.
Oh, okay. Oh, I like the idea of that.
In there is a bartender who is unrepentantly effeminate.
Oh, okay.
Frankie is a drag queen.
All right.
And where you meet him in the first book, he comes up to Tony wearing a little red dress with a feather
Okay.
boa and size 16 Ferragamo pumps.
You're talking about a character, and I'm loving the hell out of it. I
Yeah.
really am. I'm loving every little bit.
And further on in the book, when they deal with some vampires, and they discover that one of the weapons useful against this particular type of vampire is acids like vinegar, etc.
Uh-huh.
Frankie has one of those big giant Nerf gun pump squirt guns,
Uh-huh.
and he's fighting vampires with vinegar, yelling out, "Who's your daddy?"
In an effeminate African American, very deep, gravelly voice, or no?
Frankie is also a almost in a oh shoot, the word escapes me. He's almost a savant when it comes to mimicry.
Oh, okay.
There are sections of the book where he does William Shatner. There's another section of another book where he does an absolutely beautiful impersonation of Clint Eastwood as Dirty Harry.
Now, when you write that type of stuff into your book, do you say Clint Eastwood or do you describe the accent? Like if you're writing, I mean, obviously, I don't know, China probably loves American culture. So if you say Clint Eastwood, they're probably going to be able to know exactly what you're talking about. But also, they dub everything in China, right? So they're not really going to know necessarily what Clint Eastwood sounds like necessarily.
No, but there's that speech that Eastwood does on the dock on the pond where he's getting ready to blow away the serial killer.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Okay. Do you feel lucky, punk? Is the speech.
Yeah.
Well, in this scene, Tony, his girlfriend at the time, and Frankie are passing through an alley to get to another section of the city because down in San Francisco, the alleys are really pedestrian walkways used to get from point A to point B without having to go all the way around the block.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, in certain parts of the city, there are also wonderful places to get some illegal money off of the pedestrians.
Muggings,
exactly. A mugger is coming after them. And
who would mug an 8-foot tall? Who would mug an 8-foot tall black dude in drag? I just don't get it. That wouldn't happen, right?
Well, if you met some of the people in Frisco that I knew when I was there, then you would notice that fear is not one of their motivators. They're for the moment at the time, and that's it. They have needs. They want their needs fulfilled, and they don't care who gets what to get those needs fulfilled.
Yeah.
Frankie is at that moment. He's dressed like Sam Spade in one of the PI movies, fedora, overcoat, the whole thing. And he starts talking in this growly Clint Eastwood voice, and he goes into the speech, except talking about a .45 Magnum, he starts talking about this handball. This is a tough stuff handball, and it can take your head clean off. And then Tony describes it as Frankie's arm blurred. There was a sound like meat hitting the concrete wall, and the guy was down. And then as they're getting through with it, Tony turns to Frankie and says, "Eastwood?"
So Eastwood exists in your world. The movies that we would know exist in your fantasy world.
Oh, yeah. And Frankie is a pop icon sponge. He knows everything. He's also a gourmet chef. He is also a fashionista of the highest order and a massively outraged diva sometimes. He's an incredibly fun character to write.
It sounds like incredible fun novels to read, too. And it sounds like you have an incredible amount of time writing them. You love writing these.
I enjoy it.
Yeah.
I tell my wife, I'm going to go right now. I can't wait to see what happens.
I love it. So you don't outline. You basically write by the seat of your pants from beginning to end.
I outline extremely abbreviated. For example, in the novel I'm working on now, I'm dealing with Santa and Krampus.
Yeah.
And I'm just getting to the point where the revelation is coming out about the relationship between those two, which I will not say. there are also sections of this where everybody is asking Tony, where is it? I'm on page 279 and we still haven't figured out what it
Oh
is.
no. So the detective part of it's like, okay, everybody wants it. We need to figure out what it is. And the writer's like, okay, I wonder what it is as well. Let's figure it out. I love the sense of discovery throughout the entire process of writing it. I hope it's not disappointing for you. You figure out what it is, and it's all disappointing for everybody, including you. It's like, oh, that was kind of boring and a letdown.
I have deleted over 100 pages of text because when I got to that point, I was disappointed and I went back and started over again. Mostly, and anybody writing, they need to allow this organic process to happen. You have to allow the characters their own head. You can't force them to go where they do not want to go. If you do, the book reads like it's been forced.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've ever read a book where you get to the point, I can't go any further, put it down, that's what happened. They plotted the whole thing out. They had their entire Robert A. Heinlein arc, and most writers know what I'm talking about there, where everything is plotted out to the minutia. They followed that in spite of what the words said they wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
And they completed it, and nobody wants to finish it.
What is your pedigree? Where do you come from in terms of your life? Are you a writer by hook or crook from the beginning of time, or did you come from another career to this point in your life?
This is where it gets somewhat embarrassing, because I'm 66 years old right now. I have been a professional musician. I was once training to be an Olympic archer.
Oh, interesting.
I have been a stuntman for a Western dude ranch. I got killed 3 times a weekend.
Like, I've been killed 3 times. Like, oh, okay, let's talk about near-death experiences right now. No.
And because of the training for the archery, I did trick archery at that dude ranch. I also was taught how to fast draw, and I could draw and fire and hit the target with a 357 single action revolver in less than 3/10 of a second.
It's fascinating.
And I've been in politics. Some people actually wrote me up in Wikipedia for some reason for that. I was nominated for the JFK Profiles and Courage Award. And I've also been one of the nation's top foreclosure mediators with a success rate of over 85%.
Interesting. So does that mean you have a law degree, or you've been a lawyer?
No, I've trained lawyers, but I don't have a degree at all.
Oh, you did not finish a college degree, you mean?
No, I ran out of money. I was actually going to college to become an artist. I designed my own book covers.
You designed those? You drew that, or
Yeah.
Those are drawn, hand drawn?
There's some hand drawing in them. Most of it is Photoshop manipulation of about maybe anywhere upwards of 75 different images.
Your mandolin character reminds me of a buddy I went to college with. Like, spitting image. I'm like, the dude could play him in a movie. And the funny thing is, he's an actor up in Connecticut. He actually teaches acting at a community college in Connecticut. And it's like, man, if you ever want to do a movie, I'd hook you up with him in a heartbeat. The guy is like a spitting image of the mandolin.
Excellent. What's his voice like?
Yeah, he would be perfect for a gruff private eye.
Because the voice that Chris did is Mandolin's voice.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I don't think Chris physically would fit the part.
No, I know what Chris looks like. Yeah.
But this guy,
But
he's Italian. He's like, he has that dark, foreboding look. I don't know. He's not close friends with me. In fact, he refuses to do the podcast at all. We haven't spoken in like almost 10 years. But he looks like Mandolin. He's like the spitting image of Mandolin.
well, if you have a photograph, please email it.
I think I could find him. I don't know.
Because
like I said, he refuses to do the podcast, so I might be talking too much good things about him. But anyway,
there's a website. There is an author website, and this would be perfect for news. I mean, I'm going to be talking about this interview on the website in the Mandolin Musings portion, and it will be Tony's notes on the conversation, not mine.
Honestly, I mean, I would love to read these books too. You know how time gets away from you. I have twins, 2-year-olds, and the writing and the podcast and the babies just take away all of my time. I have a list of books I want to read so badly, and it's like everything is like, where's my time at?
Well, what you need is you need a Kindle Paperwhite, so you can load it up with every book that you want.
I have one. It's my phone. It's like 300 books on there, and every time I pick it up, my son wants to take it from me and run to the other side of the room.
Let him have the phone. You pick up the Kindle.
Okay.
I find I do my best reading just before I go to sleep.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I fall asleep. I hit the pillow and I'm out. When do you write? When do you write the best? Like when is
Early mornings.
Early mornings, yeah, me too. I'm a early morning guy. 2:00, I'm up, I write, and then everybody else is awake. I cannot talk to anybody.
Mm-hmm. The phone doesn't ring. The email doesn't go ding, and it's quiet. I can put on some music in the background. Find one of my playlists. Get that going. I like instrumental music when I write. I do not like singing.
Yeah, me too. Instrumental. What kind of music does Mandolin like playing in the background when he gets developed?
There's a playlist on YouTube called Epic Pirate Music.
Epic pirate music. Interesting. Why pirate music?
The soundtrack of Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah.
Okay, there are composers all over the world who have been influenced by that.
Interesting.
And it's about 3 hours long, a playlist of pieces of music like that. And I turn it down enough where it's soft enough, and I'm writing for it. There was one scene in one of the novels where it's the book number 5 called Lucky Stiff. Yes, zombies are part of the story.
Yeah, I love the fact that your novels have so many different elements to them. You have I just love the character, the 8-foot tall black cross-dressing Jackson, what is his name?
Franklin Amadeus Jackson.
I love it. He's enough right now for me to pick up the first novel and just start reading. I hope that I get into your books and just start becoming a fan, because that guy alone, Mandolin character, kind of being the hard-boiled detective, and then you have all of the fantasy tropes in the background. And the city, I mean, this city is amazing for the backdrop that you're kind of building, because it's foggy, it's cold, it's windy. It's filled with alleys. It's filled with dirt bags. It's filled with rich. It's filled with fame. It's filled with, all these elements. I mean, it's just so great.
Yeah, everything is there. It's a stew that I'm just adding to.
Yeah. I mean, do you write?
What it is.
I mean, when I write, I found a monk chant thing on YouTube that I play. It's like 3 hours long. It's real slow. I mean, YouTube is great for that.
Oh, it is. Have you ever been in the heart of San Francisco, the corner of Market and Valencia?
Maybe. I was in the Mission District when I went.
Then you were very close to it. The Mission cuts right through the Mission District. In fact, on the other side of the Mission District, you have the Castro.
Yes.
So you were right in there. Well, on Market Street, when you get down there where all of the trolley cars and the buses kind of get intertwined.
Yep.
You ever notice the hot dog vendors, the sandwich vendors?
I don't. It's crazy down there. I was nervous. That was like one of my first experiences in a big city. I'd just gotten out of the Army. I was checking it out to move there, and the buses were crazy. And I got on it, and this dude was staring daggers at me, and I couldn't figure out why he was staring at me until much later on. You know, a few years later, I realized, oh, he was probably whatever.
Oh, but
I couldn't figure it out. I thought he wanted to kill me or something. Maybe it was that, or you know, he had the hots for me or something. But I couldn't. At that time, I was nervous. I was like, why is he staring at me?
Well, where you were, he very easily could have been checking you out as a potential date. So don't worry about that.
I was 21. I was like, I had no clue. This is like the late 90s, actually. You know, that hadn't really. Very young.
No, believe me, it had been going on for more than 20 years by that time.
Yeah.
But in that area, there's a character in the book called Billy Bunty. And Billy shows up here and there. And Billy is a composite of people I've known. And he's one of those people who always finds the good in people. Everybody loves Billy. Of course, Billy loves his food even more than he loves people. And Tony remarks that Billy would even have found something good about Hannibal Lecter, maybe his taste in wine.
Chianti.
Yeah. But and that's what you have to do with it is you have to have the characters. And one of my other favorite characters is Antonio Lucchesi.
Great names, by the way.
Yeah, well, Antonio is actually built on a guy I actually know. Part of my background is I also designed signs for the casino industry.
Oh, let's put a pin in this real quick. I wanted to go back to your archery. Did you say you had gone to the Olympics or you were training to go to the Olympics?
I was training to go to the Olympics, and then I met a girl I wound up marrying, and all of that went away.
Oh, girls, they're always distracting. But it correlated to you being a quick draw and working with handguns.
Yes.
In a Wild West show.
Yes, it was called the Lazy L Ranch.
So I'm guessing in your novels, you work with weapons.
Yes, I do.
And is there magic in your work as well?
There is
magic. There is magic. Who has magic in your work? You have magicians and sorcerers and necromancers and things of that nature.
Every one of them.
Oh wow, it's interesting. So how do you work your magic? Because I mean that's a theme within these fantasy novels.
Well, you have to have consequences for the magic. Magic is a tool, and if the person you have being magic can use that power without consequences, you need to be writing something else. In the Tony Mandelin series, there actually is a wizard. I actually got that inspiration from Jim Butcher with his Harry Dresden books. But my wizard is also an alcoholic.
That probably doesn't go over very well.
He's a troubled alcoholic. And the first time Tony meets him in the second book, he's not in the first book. In the first time Tony meets him in the second book, he fries Tony right there with the magical electric charge. Because Bane is drunk and Tony disturbed him. And Tony wakes up in a chair in Bane's living room that's littered with whiskey bottles. And Bane explains to Tony through the various series what magic is and how it's best used. Say, for example, you have the power to open a passageway, essentially a wormhole on the Earth going from Paris to Tokyo. That takes power. Power takes energy and resources and reserves within the body, as well as tying into anything from the outside. You can't just write it. You have to think it through. It has to be logical.
Mm-hmm.
And the magic in my books is logical.
And there are repercussions for everything.
Oh, definitely. There's one scene at the end of Clone in the Closet where Frankie and Tony are kidnapped by this mad scientist. And as part of this, a fire elemental, the name is spelled Sutr, and it's from Norse mythology. And Bane manages to shield them from the heat of this elemental, but in doing so, he uses up almost all of his life force. And he manages to come back through help because he didn't lose it all. But the consequences are there.
You know what I'm getting from you more than anything else is that you're having a lot of fun writing. I speak with, like I said, you're like my 52nd interview, and I'm very new experience with this podcast. I've only been doing it about 3 months, but a lot of authors come on, they're like, I'm going to be rich and famous, or I'm going to be blah, 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 or this is a gateway to something else. You're writing from the heart. I can tell this. You're writing because you love these characters. I mean, you're writing because you're really enjoying it. I mean,
J.K. Rowling and both J.K. Rowling and Terry Pratchett have been interviewed extensively. And one of the things that I got from them in listening to their interviews was the fact that they identified with their books. The books were not written to create a future for them. The books were written because they needed to be written. They wanted to come out. And that's the way it is with these. These books are a family that I'm building.
that's interesting.
Even the characters I write because they're a villain that I need to deal with. I kind of hate to see them go.
Yeah. Well, are you disappointed at all that you find yourself stuck in a series? Are there other heroes that you want to write about? Would you ever want to write?
I'm not stuck. I'm not at all stuck. While I'm working on book 8, I'm also writing a Scottish historical novel.
Oh, I love this. Have you ever read Outlander, the Outlander series from what is her name? Diana Gabaldon.
Yep. This is written about the 43 more so than what she's writing about. The 43 was where the Bruce lost.
Oh, I got
his
you.
battle.
That was Braveheart, right?
Yeah, that was Braveheart, but all they ever talk about is William Wallace, and Wallace wasn't really that involved in the 43. He became a mythical figure, but he really only had one little part to do in it. This book is actually about a couple of the grunts, the guys nobody talked about in there, and their journey after that battle to get back to their clan, to their villages, and what they wind up running into on the way. It's almost like Butch and Sundance meet the Highlands.
Uh-huh. That's interesting because I like writing about grunts too. I like writing about the little people.
Yeah, and what it is, it's another story that that needs to be told because part of my background is Scottish. My mother was a MacDonald.
Oh, okay.
And
Are
one of my best.
Are you a veteran yourself?
Yeah, and one of my best friends is related to the Bruce.
Really?
Yeah.
How and like well, obviously distantly.
Oh, well, of course, even though my first name is Robert and my mother's maiden name was McDonald, I don't get a single penny of money from the estate.
Well, I mean, is there one still?
Oh, yes. In fact, the head of the McDonald clan is named Robert.
Man, that's fascinating. I can't stretch my family. My family has been in this country on my father's side since not the Civil War, the Revolutionary War. And my mom's side jumped ship the Italian Navy in the turn of the 20th century. So they were basically illegal immigrants. Can't
Yeah,
really stretch back to Europe at all.
I think we'll let you stay.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
Yeah, my mother's family's background is not that great. There's a great line out of one of Terry Pratchett books where they're talking about kings.
Yeah.
And the only reason this person is king is because his great granddaddy was a bigger murdering bastard than everybody else.
Kings are interesting. I mean, in your novel, are we writing about America in terms of, is there a president? Is there a Congress? Is there local governments like we know it? Or is there a king? Is there a different seating? Is there a different type of government?
No. In the Tony Madeline series, we're here. There are allusions to what's going on in the world, current events, who's the president. But bear in mind that Tony's viewpoint of politics is rather cynical.
Well, let me ask you this. I mean, we're getting into world building a little bit, because how do you handle a world and a representative government when there's magic, when there are zombies, when there are vampires?
Well, we deal with it much the same way that Glenn Cook and Butcher deal with it, which I found to be very logical. And so I said, yeah, I'm going to use that avenue. Most people do not see what they don't want to see.
So as in presidential or normal people don't see vampires and zombies, they see, I'm a heroin addict, that's why my skin is falling off. Or vampires are only coming out at night feeding, and dead people are dead people, and it's not a vampire victim, it's just a dead person.
Yeah, in fact, Patrick Monahan, police captain for the San Francisco City Police Department. He is, and this is a typical PI story ploy. It worked for Sam Spade. It worked for Rex Stout. It'll work for me. He's one of the few friends on the police department that Tony has. Most of the people in the police department think Tony is somewhat lower than the crap that they just scraped off the bottom of their shoe. And Monahan has a phrase for the weird crap that Tony gets involved in. Monahan is aware that it's going on, but he does not want to be bothered with it. He calls it mandolin madness, or MM. And that's worked into the narrative.
So why does stuff like this happen to Mandolin?
Because of the very first case. If you get into the novels, you will understand perfectly why it happens and how other people are added into this circle of knowledge. There is a scene in the second book where Tony is trapped by a witch, and he's naked on the floor in a magical circle, in a spell circle, with and spread-eagled and ready to be sacrificed. They rescue him, but the only way the circle can be broken is if Tony somehow manages to break the circle from the inside. He's trapped. Not even Landau Bane, who is the wizard, can get him out of it. And in doing this research, I was writing this and how am I did I write myself into a corner? How am I going to get out of this? And then I'd been writing so long, I had to go to the bathroom really bad. So I wrote that into the scene. Tony peed himself out of the circle because the urine was part of him. It crossed the circle. It broke the spell.
Interesting. But he kind of magnetized himself in the occult.
Well, he was brought in when he became involved in this very first case with the vampire, and at one point he saw the vampire as it really was, as it was feeding. And it was explained to him later on. It says, well, you're in it now, Boyle. You're going to be seeing a whole lot more stuff from this point on because your eyes have been opened.
So it's normal America. All of this stuff is happening.
Mm-hmm.
And I just don't see it, and you don't see it.
Exactly. You know, those little flickers out of the corners of your eye. You thought you saw something, but nothing's there when you turn to look at it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in these books, it really was there.
So which one of your books is your favorite? If you had to pick one, if you were forced to. Or is that like
If
Me
I
and
was
My
forced
Children?
It would be the second book.
The second one's your favorite?
Yeah, called One Last Quiche. Because one of the things that I am is I'm also a hobby chef. I like cooking gourmet food.
Oh, I love cooking too, yeah.
And in that book, somebody is poisoning the patrons of San Francisco's 5-star restaurants. And they have their own association, and they're being targeted. And Tony is brought in to try to solve this. And I get to write about the recipes and explore how various dishes work. And of course, Frankie, being a gourmet cook as well as a raging diva, has this great conversation with one of the maitre d's, who's also a raging diva, and they're discussing Tony like he's a side of meat. And all of these recipes and talking about the various flavors and the nuances come into it. And it was a lot of fun to write. And it's also the book that contains that scene with the magic circle in the urine.
They also say the second book is the hardest one to write, getting the second novel out of the way.
No. It came so naturally. There was nothing hard about it. It was a joy. I had so much fun writing that thing.
Oh, my first novel was a pain, and my second novel is a pain, and my third novel is not finished either, and they're all pains.
Well, you need to open your inner ear and listen to the voices, have the characters speak to you.
Characters, no, I'm joking. They're fine. They're all horrible people, though. They're doing dumb things. Man, I got to tell you, this is a great conversation. Chris Herron suggested that you had something to do with Black Panther. Is that just a rumor that he picked up someplace along the way?
No, it's absolutely true. Also with Yellow Jacket.
Wow, interesting. So how was it that you came to work for Marvel?
I didn't work for Marvel. I was a fan. I was 14 years old. I sent them artwork and character sketches in a fan letter. Stan Lee took them, put them into his books, and sent me a card that said, "Thank you, Robert."
And stole your ideas?
He's famous for that.
Yeah, he is actually, isn't he?
Yeah, most of his ideas were not his.
What a jerk. How do you feel about that?
Yes, but look how much entertainment that jerk gave us.
No, it's true. And my theory is that Stan Lee is going to be the 21st century equivalent to Shakespeare, too.
Oh, probably.
Right? I mean, he's going to live forever. And 300, 400, 500 years from now, his name is going to be continuously known and read. And they're going to be kids in the 26th century. Oh, I have to read Stan Lee today. Oh, I have to read the anthology of Spider-Man. Darn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and actually, the comic that caused me to write that fan letter was the one that introduced Spider-Man, with Stan Lee and Mike Ditko doing the art.
What, really? The was it Amazing Tales or something along those lines?
Yeah, it cost me 10 cents.
Interesting. So what prevented you from going into comics then? You obviously did you draw? You were into art, you like to write? What
I had too many other interests. I like doing so many different things that each one got in the way of the other one turning into a career. My very first job out of high school was a courtroom artist for my local newspaper.
yeah.
But also at the same time, I was interested in athletics, doing the shooting and the running and stuff like that. And I was still interested in writing, and I was also interested in cooking. And where I grew up, you could go mushrooming. Produce was free where I grew up.
Where'd you grow up?
Arcata, Eureka, the Humboldt Bay area in Northern California.
That is beautiful. I love that area. I've been through there
Yeah,
one time. When I
to
get
this
angry at
day-
my wife, I look up Greyhound bus tickets to that area.
Yeah, I know. To this day, I find it very difficult to pay for berries or fish or mushrooms, because where I grew up, you just went out and collected them.
Oh man, that is a beautiful, beautiful area of the country.
Mm-hmm.
Can't even imagine growing up there. Why'd you leave?
Money.
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 Oh man. That is a gorgeous, gorgeous area. Eureka, man. I went through that town one time. It's so gorgeous. I ended up moving to Seattle ultimately and living there for about 3 years. But I didn't think there were jobs in Eureka, honestly, unless I wanted to like pick weed or something.
That's pretty much it.
That's it, right?
That is pretty much it. The area does not manufacture its own wealth outside of pot.
Yeah, that's what I heard, and that's unfortunate. I mean, it's a great looking old town, and I mean, I watch an older man yell at a McDonald's worker for like 10 minutes about his burger being wrong, and he threw it at her, and that was pretty much entertaining. But it didn't seem like anything else was.
Yeah, look at a beautiful area. The weather is almost always perfect if you're a banana slug.
I am a banana slug. I love that type of weather. That's my thing.
Yeah.
Cloudy and wet.
Yeah.
I love it so much.
and street theater is free and continuous.
How do you mean?
Well,
I'm not
the
going
old
to take
man-
that at face value. I'm sure you mean something else.
The street theater, like the odd people that go through, especially the old town section down there, where it's all brick and ancient Victorian shops and stuff. And because of that area and what it collects, you get more characters for inspiration in writing than anywhere else in the world outside of San Francisco.
And it has supposedly a fantastic arts community, like a huge arts community, bigger than anywhere else in the entire country.
Bigger than anywhere else in the world.
Yeah, and I guess that's because there's no place to work. They have to do something, manufacture coffee mugs. I don't know.
Murals are everywhere. Sculpture is everywhere. It's a place that has. That's where the kinetic sculpture race was originated.
Interesting.
Do you know who Guy Ferrari is?
Yes, I do. Unfortunately, we have one of his horrible restaurants here.
Well, he grew up in the town of Ferndale, that same place where they filmed Outbreak and The Majestic.
Okay, the Majestic I'm familiar with. Outbreak is the one with the monkey, right?
Outbreak is the one with the monkey, and his family had a little farm there or a little restaurant. He went to Ferndale High School.
It's interesting. I mean, that's not really much to brag about, though. Unfortunately,
No,
they should probably
but-
erase that from the record.
But look at the character. Look at the character that he is.
No, that's true. He's got a good personality. I mean, honestly, he can stand in front of a camera and pretend like he didn't make that hot garbage pile of a restaurant in Manhattan and ruin our culture.
Exactly, but that's not what makes him writable. What makes him writable is the personality, the character, the spiky hair. He is a character, and he is destined to show up in one of the Tony Mandolins.
Oh, really? You're gonna do it?
Oh yeah, because that's where the characters come from. They come from observation. They get lodged into the brain and you develop them in the background as you're doing other things else, and eventually they're going to come out.
So let me ask you this: you're in Australia. You're being published through there. You're traditionally and privately or independently published in America. What's next for you? What are you going to do? Book 8 is being written right now. You're working on your second series.
There's a company that I cannot name that produces full cast productions of audiobooks.
Okay.
They optioned the first 5 novels.
Interesting. Are you going to get Chris Herron to do some voices? Are you going to pay for him so he can quit his horrible job at the ceramic studio or wherever he works?
I told him about it. He said he would love to. He would love to. But that's between he and them. I am under very, very strict orders not to talk about the company.
Well, I'm his agent. I require that he makes at least $500,000 a book, and I get 10%. So.
Okay, that's fine. They if they come out, you aren't the first person who has mentioned movies and stuff like that. I would love to see the Tony Mandolins either become movies or a TV series. I would prefer TV series.
YouTube. Go YouTube. Go to YouTube Red or something.
Yes, something like that, because they're written with that in mind. This one, and if you get a chance to read them, you'll notice that these books create a movie in the mind. As you're reading, you can picture the scene, and they even switch from scene to scene the way a proper production is correctly edited.
Well, I definitely had a good time talking with you, and the best part about this conversation is I detected a love of your books and your characters. And that's the most important part here, is that you love what you're doing, and your readers will love what you're producing. And hopefully, good things happen for what you're doing, and, continue doing it.
I have no doubt. I actually have 12 books plotted out.
Oh, good for you. And then you have a series planned. So in 4 books, that's it for the Mandolin series for the time being.
Well, I don't know. It depends on what's coming out, because if you take the time and you go over to the website, it's a Wix site. You just, any browser, if you type into any browser my full name, Robert Lee Beers, and then the word WIX, that author site will come up.
Okay.
And in that site, I have the first chapter of every single book that I've written, including the first chapter, the one that I'm writing. I have all the book covers I've designed for the books I plotted out. I have character portraits and character sketches in there for the main characters in the books for both the Tony Mandolin and the Epic Fantasy series.
Do you have contact information also on the website? Because I don't think I asked you for marketing, or did I?
I have contact information in there as well. Yeah.
Okay, good. Awesome. Excellent. So I'll feed that into the notes on
including links. And I have included in there, I didn't ask Chris if I could do it, but I did it because he did such a good job. I have a link to Tall Tale TV.
Oh, he wants you to do that. Absolutely. He wants you to do that. It helps him and it helps you. So that's why he does what he's doing.
Yeah.
And that's perfect. Excellent. Man, I really enjoyed this conversation. I asked 2 questions to finish it out. The first one being, what are you reading, so that people can kind of get a glimpse as to what you're working on.
I just finished reading a book written by one of my friends. His name is Jamie McFarlane, and he writes science fiction. He also writes fantasy, but this is the science fiction series is what I have, and it's called Privateer Tales. And it's very well done. It's first-person sci-fi, very reminiscent of Heinlein.
Privateer Tales.
Privateer Tales. That's the series.
Excellent. I'm going to put that in the notes. And my last question for you today is, what do you tell people struggling to create? What would you tell somebody struggling to create?
I tell them what I already told you. You need to relax. One of the problems people you're struggling to create is because you're struggling. Anything that you do, for example, if you're trying to get the 10 at 70 yards in archery and you keep hitting the 5, if you relax, you'll probably hit the 10. It's the same thing with writing. You need to relax into the story, allow the story to come. And if something doesn't come, start typing anyway. Allow it to build.
Start
It's an
typing
organic
anyway.
process.
I love that. That's
Yeah.
or just aim for the 5. Right?
Yeah.
Robert, I really enjoyed this conversation. I thank you so much for being willing to come on and talk with me. We went over an hour by a little bit, but I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation a lot. And man, every time I see Black Panther, and did you say the Wasp too?
No, Yellow Jacket.
Yellow Jacket. I'm not even familiar with that character, but I am definitely familiar with
Yellow
Panther.
Yellow Jacket showed up in Ant-Man.
Okay, well, it makes sense that would be the where that character would be birthed. But from now on, I'm going to let people know Bob Beers is who originated the character of Black Panther. Are you excited to see the movie come out? Does it make you mad?
Oh, so excited. Yes, actually, yeah. I'm really interested in seeing what they did with it.
Hey, do you happen to have the art, or did that disappear completely?
The original art was sent to Stan Lee, so it's in his archive somewhere.
No photocopies or electronic exist from that point, huh?
They did not exist in 1963.
Yeah,
no.
trusting 14-year-old you didn't make a copy of your art.
No.
All right, sir. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this conversation again, and you have a great day.
I sure will.